I'm very passionate and interested in politics, so I think my beliefs are definitely based in like my political perspectives. And I think in the last year, just seeing the outrage and the destruction and the devastation that has occurred in our society, specifically with people of color and with Black lives, I think it really ignited a lot of thinking on my end. And I had done work. I'm from New York, and I had done work with an organization based out of Long Island, New York, for 2 years, and then now it'll be 3. But when last summer occurred, it was 2 years, and there I was able to really develop my belief system and really understand my position in society as a white woman, and understand what societal positions mean and the power that are behind them, and how they therefore help formulate beliefs. So I was able to also with that understand the concept of systemic racism, and how, I think the way as a society we teach racism or lack thereof is we do it through a very, I think, color-blinded perspective, right? Of it was years ago we had slavery, and we're all equal now and we're fine, rather than and this almost like fear of using the word racism, and fear of having those conversations. And looking into that, I was able to reflect on my educational experience and how I saw that fear of ism, sexism, racism, so forth, really prevalent. And it made me wonder, what would my educational experience look like, and would my belief system, would it have been more heavily developed earlier on if our education system offered a venue where students could question and have those conversations, and learn about racism, not read a biography about Rosa Parks. And yes, I mean, a wonderful woman who had such bravery, but we're still fighting that same fight, and it's not a historical issue. And so I guess the encompassing belief here is more so of just, I believe that as a society we need to reach a place where the idea of systemic racism is taught, is learned, and is understood, rather than this notion of colorblindness, and that we're living in this free and equal world. And how you do that, I think, is of course very difficult. I think the first step is the equity piece and the funding piece, but also as white people, it's also about amplifying marginalized voices.
So if I were to encapsulate the belief that there is systemic racism that exists in our country, and that we should accept that is happening and make corrections for that.
Yeah.
And I know I'm saying it in like 2 or 3 sentences, but is that, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, is that encapsulate the belief so we can discuss it better? Okay, good. On a scale from 1 to 7, how confident are you that this belief is true?
Is 1 being not very confident?
1's not much, sorry, that 1, 7 is really confident.
I mean, I don't want to, come to the table with narcissism, but also it's, again, I'm also validating the idea that I'm a white woman with white privilege, and I'm never going to know or be able to empathize what it's like to navigate as a Black person in society. But I do think this belief of systemic racism and the presence of it and the need to talk about it and solve it is very valid, and I would give it a 7.
Okay. And on a scale from 1 to 7, how important is it for you to believe in true things?
A 7. Yeah. Great. I think
If someone were to ask you, to give me the primary reason why you believe the belief, like the fundamental reason why you believe systemic racism is present and why it's a problem, what would you tell that person?
I think my fundamental reasoning is looking at the history of our country, and I think if you trace back to the origins of our country, there's no denying it. It's a very factual issue, and a very the facts and the evidence is there, and social institutions have rejected people of color since the origins of America, and that's why the question also comes to mind: is it even an opinion or a belief? It's just, to me, it's factual, you know?
So the primary reason why you believe the belief is that there seems to be a history of systemic racism in the country, and that has showed you that it's a continuing problem that needs to be addressed. A hypothetical: let's say that Sarah is sitting next to you.
Yeah.
And Sarah believes that, there might have been systemic racism in the past and in our history, and it's affected institutions, but now I think things are okay, and that if there's racism and racist attitudes, it's not much, and it doesn't probably impact that many people to really need to change much about it. And that's just what Sarah says. And I'm listening to you and Sarah talk about this, and you have your belief, and Sarah seems like to have an opposing belief to yours. And I just want to know what's true, what's objectively true. How could I find out who is speaking more what is objectively true about whether systemic racism exists or is not an issue?
Well, right. And I think that's an important question to ask when talking about beliefs, because, if anything's subjective, it's beliefs. So I think the main idea is to take the feeling, the personal feeling, and this idea of personalizing our beliefs out of it, and just looking at when it comes to political ideologies. I think when it becomes to political ideologies, you need to look at the factual basis. And if Sarah can't pull from a factual basis and she's pulling from her privilege, I don't know how farther that conversation can go.
How could we help Sarah then find out whether her belief comes from white privilege, as you say, or from...
Assuming Sarah's white.
Assuming she's white.
Right.
Yeah, good point. Or from some facts that she's drawing from,
Yeah, I think I would... when I first started exploring these ideas, I think white privilege in itself is something very complex to fully understand and embody, or to reject. That rejection, and can be hard to embody. But it's more so about how I see white privilege. I look at it very, very simple. It's not about that economic privilege part. You talk to people, and people will say, I've worked my whole entire life and I have nothing. I have no resources, and that could be a white man.
Right.
What we deem as society the most privileged person. But it's not about the economic privilege. It's about being able to, walk the streets of your neighborhood and not have and feel threatened. It's to be able to live a life free of racial bias when you're applying to jobs and so forth. So I would encourage Sarah to take another look at her belief system, as we are all entitled to our beliefs, to take another look and maybe ponder and say, as a white person, what are the privileges I have, and how can this be maybe tainting it?
Well, let's change the hypothetical then. Let's just for a thought experiment, let's suppose Sarah is black. And Sarah has the same belief, that there is not systemic racism, and I seem to be getting along fine, and I don't really notice these issues, where I live or in my direct experience. If Sarah has that belief, and now she's African American, does that change anything in your mind? Does that change how you see your beliefs, or was that not change your beliefs?
Well, I also think beliefs in general, and this is just a side note, foster fluidity. I think beliefs have the power to change as you evolve as a person and as you kind of connect with other people in your network.
When beliefs change, as you say, are they changing because of a subjective experience, or are they changing to match on to what's objectively real and true in the world?
Well, I think that's the process of your own quest, right? Are your beliefs changing because it seems like it's the trending belief, or are your beliefs changing because you truly feel like this is a powerful belief that could, revitalize some good in our world? I think that when you start to feel your beliefs changing, those are questions to ask. And to trace back to the hypothetical, I think if Sarah was a Black woman and she were to say, I don't, like you said, I think I'd be very intrigued by that conversation. And I think that's a piece that I think as a society we fail to truly understand. I think we look at beliefs, and that's, I think, where I was going with that. We look at beliefs as very solid things, and we personalize our beliefs. I think sometimes our belief systems become too concrete that it's hard to sustain a conversation. And I think if a conversation can prevail and one can exchange information, and now as a white person I'm saying, people of color are victimized by society due to systemic racism, and now a person of color is saying I don't feel victimized by that systemic racism, I would want to engage in that conversation, because at the end of the day, the marginalized voice matters way more than my white voice.
And when you and Sarah are talking, and could it be said that somewhere in your conversation that there is an objective truth that either systemic racism exists and persists in this country and it's influencing what we do and decisions we make, or it doesn't exist and it's something that we think it might be there and might not be there for whatever reason? Is there an objective truth there, or is it a personal, subjective belief?
Right. I think, and like I was kind of alluding to earlier, I think political beliefs should be factual and based in facts rather than heavily personalized. But again, I could see how an argument could be said, well, Sage, you're saying that. You're saying you don't have to personalize your politics because you are a white woman. And I think if we look at marginalized lives, our politics are their personal truths every day. Their truth is, I don't want to speak for marginalized lives, but I mean, I think it's pretty blatant that a lot of people of color are subjected to racial biases and systemic racism, and that does become personal. So it's a fine line of honoring the facts and amplifying the stories.
Well, maybe this will help me. This is a box of Mentos.
Yes.
Which is much better than Tic Tacs because they're just better. Let's say there's either an even or odd number of Mentos in this box.
Right.
I don't know what the answer is. I presume you don't know what the answer is. But could it be said that there is an objective truth there? That doesn't matter what I believe, it doesn't matter what you believe, that the answer is the answer and it just is what it is? Would you think that that's correct, or am I not seeing something correct about that statement or question?
Well, I think because Mentos are such a trivial part of society and life, that I think sometimes with the more trivial aspects of life, it's easier to just, honor whatever the person's saying who's saying that to you, right? But when we get into the more complex issues, and like systemic racism, I think you have to take more of a path to coming to a place of understanding, is this a truth? Is this an objective truth, right? Because we're not just talking about Mentos, we're talking about lives, and we're talking about stories, and I think, and policies, and I think that is when it's hard to really understand what the objective truth is, and that's when the thinking.
Sure, and I think I see where you're coming from. I do, and let's say with the even or odd number of Mentos, we might not know the objective truth, because I'm here to tell you I don't know the objective truth whether there's an even or odd number of Mentos in this box.
Right.
And I'm trying to see how you see truth, and in the sense of the Mentos, would you say that there is one that doesn't matter what we believe, that it's just the answer is what the answer is? Or does it depend on what we believe?
I think when brought to the table with a fact, someone telling you something that they're saying in a factual way, I think it's important to question, and I think it's important to have that moment of questioning, not of every small thing, like how many men, but to have the approach in life to say, this person's telling me this, but
does questioning the number of Mentos, does that change the number?
No, but I think that's just an important attitude to have. I think
yes, and I see where you're coming from. I do. I think it's a good attitude to have, to question your beliefs, and I do see where you're coming from. And I'm just really trying to see how you see the world and how you form your beliefs, and I'm trying to see that. I'm trying to see whether there's some objective information there that doesn't matter what we believe, or is this information dependent on what we believe about it?
I think if there is, if someone brings me like research and support and stats and a firm analysis on any issue and can fully explain it, I will believe that, and I will, and I think a moment of questioning will arise, but then if they align with my belief systems, I think I'll be able to believe that.
So if it aligns with your belief system?
Right.
Okay. Well, and I know this is a concrete thing that we're talking about, Mentos. But what if I said that I believe that there is an even number of Mentos in this box, and if somebody told me that that's not true, that there's an odd number, and if we counted them and it was an odd number, and then I would say, oh, my belief about this was incorrect, it's an odd number, I will now believe that there are an odd number of Mentos in this box because it seems that is the objective reality. In the case of your belief, and that you believe that there's systemic racism exists in the world, if someone presented you with a lot of data, objective data that showed, hey, look at this, this, and this, it shows that there's not systemic racism in this world, would you reduce your confidence level in the belief, or would you still have the belief basically at the same level you have the belief now?
I think I would do two things. I think, and I know I keep going back to it, but I think there are a few things there. I think when you're brought all the information, I think it's very important to value your beliefs, and value who you are as a person, and understand that you should never abandon your beliefs or the way you see the world, just
should
because
you abandon incorrect beliefs?
Well, I think then also understanding that there's fluidity in beliefs, and then understanding that you should never abandon who you are as a person and seeing the fluidity. Does that make sense? Having that dialectic of seeing that beliefs can change, but also understanding that if you feel firm in a belief and you feel that aligns with who you are,
I think I see.
Then there's no need to abandon.
So you're saying that you understand that there's data and to look at the data, but if you feel strongly about the belief,
right,
and it resonates with you,
right,
then you should still hold on to the belief.
If someone was going to come with a portfolio of information of how systemic racism does not exist, and how we should stop talking about systemic racism in schools and talk about this patriotic approach, I would not, despite the statistics, and I know I said earlier, if I was given research, I'd be able to believe it, have an easier time believing it. I guess.
So it sounds like with systemic racism, that there is research to show that it exists, and if you were shown that research on systemic racism doesn't exist, you would still go on probably believing the belief.
Right.
And the reason why you would go on believing the belief, because you have a sense, a feeling, an intuition, maybe for lack of a better word, that the belief is true. Is feeling that a belief is true, is that a reliable way to know whether a belief is true, do you think?
Well, I think that's a very subjective way to determine, a belief, if one person views their belief as true. And I think it also perpetuates the narcissism that we foster in society. If I think this and my belief is true. I think beliefs, as they are your own, they need to be backed, and that's when I come back to the research aspect.
Okay.
And if it is a belief that requires research and statistics.
Is this a belief that requires research and statistics?
Systemic racism,
okay.
Okay. I would deem it so.
Yeah. So I'm just trying to understand, because you're telling me that if there was research and statistics that said to the contrary for whatever reason, and I have no idea because I don't know much about this, and I'm just saying this as hypothetical. It seems like you still hold on to the belief.
Right.
Is it useful or valuable, do you think, just in a general sense, about any belief, to have a belief, any belief, that can't be shown to be incorrect if it's incorrect? Not saying it's incorrect, but if it's incorrect, is it useful to have a belief that can't be shown to be incorrect? Because if it can't be shown to be incorrect, then how do we really know that it's true?
Well, right, and I think that's why I prefaced with this idea of questioning, and this idea of understanding that your belief is not the only valid belief in society, and I think it becomes difficult when we start talking about political issues, because
it's difficult.
I truly believe that there are some political ideologies that just are right, and that just are the right way to see our world, and it's lives that it's affecting lives that aren't mine. So how can I speak carefully and appropriately for those lives?
Let me put it this way.
Yes.
If your belief was incorrect, and I'm not saying that, but if it was,
right,
how would you be able to show yourself that it was? If it was, is there a way a test you could employ, or something that you could a way to show yourself that it was incorrect, if it was incorrect?
Right.
A way to know.
I think it comes with conversations. I don't think just one conversation, one venue where you were exposed to this idea that maybe your belief isn't very valid. I don't think one experience should invalidate a belief, but I think.
But in your case, like, how would you go about doing it?
Right.
Presumably, I'm presuming I'm making an assumption you want to know the truth about this.
Right.
And if I'm talking with you, and if it's a true thing, if systemic racism it exists and persists in this world, I would like to believe it. And if it doesn't, then I'd rather not believe it. I would like to believe what's true and real. And with your belief, I think you're telling me that it's true and real, but I'm saying that if it's true and real, I would kind of need to know that if it wasn't true and real, how you'd be able to find that out, so it'd make me more confident in what you're saying, and I'd be able to adjust my beliefs accordingly.
Right.
Yeah.
I think if I was told that, if I was met with many different occasions and met with evidence and research and sound reasoning of why my belief is incorrect, then I think what I'm trying to get at is it needs to be multiple conversations, especially with political issues. You need to be willing to have multiple conversations and multiple discussions, hear from marginalized voices,
right.
Amplify those voices, and find the most equitable approaches. And if you have found the most equitable approaches, and if you have amplified marginalized voices, and you have heard and listened to people's stories, I think those components form a political belief. And I think if I had that, and that proved that my belief was incorrect, that'd be something to think about.